All right, you got my face today. So normally I start these videos by kind of diving right in. I might make a little bit of a joke or a skit. Your mileage may vary on whether they're funny or not. And we talk about things in the abstract, but today I kind of just wanted to get something out of the way up front. You see, I love A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. Actually, I think the word love isn't even strong enough. I worship these books. I can, hand on heart, honestly say that this is easily my favorite book series of all time. Of course, there are maybe individual books that I like more, but as a series, no contest. I have loved these books ever since 2006, I think it was, when I was working as an unpaid intern at a publishing company, and I was given a first edition copy of the then recently published paperback version of A Feast for Crows in lieu of actual pay. Reading these books for the first time was a transformative experience for me. There's no other word for it, and it impacted the way that I approach my own storytelling, the way I do world building, the way I create characters, the way I tell stories, just everything that I've done since, especially in D&D. Honestly, it's embarrassing to admit, but there was a solid year or so of my life back in the early 2010s when I would be trawling through Westeros.org every single day, reading up all these fan theories and people pointing out these little details and linking up things that they'd noticed on their 50th read through. And I think I probably knew more about this fictional world of Westeros than I did about the real world in terms of its history, its geography, the different kind of power players that there were in the world. I've read everything that I possibly can related to A Song of Ice and Fire, the supplementary works, the Duncan Egg books, the World of Ice and Fire compendium, George's blog, of course, and then when we're still waiting, I then dived into George's back catalogue. I read some of his other incredible works, Fever Dream, Tough Voyaging, just to name but two. And I'm telling you all of this because I need you to understand something quite crucial for this video, because today I am going to be making a ranger in D&D. And as soon as that class came up on the rota, there really was no other character that I could think of making than Jon Snow from A Song of Ice and Fire. I love that character, love him. Serious man crush on that guy. I know him inside out. I know he's going to make a fantastic D&D ranger. But I need to be crystal clear here that the Jon Snow that I am going to be creating today is the Jon Snow of the books. Because there is another version of Jon Snow out there, one who looks like this and who is seen on HBO's Game of Thrones TV show. Now, confession time here, I have never seen HBO's Game of Thrones TV show. Of course, I have seen clips. Of course, I live perpetually online, so I have been exposed to bits and pieces, and of course the whole controversy of the last season. But in terms of deliberately sitting down to watch the whole thing through, never, not once, and I don't plan on ever doing it. And why? Well, simply because I have a version of Westeros that exists rent-free inside my head, and I love that version. I have in my head a version of Jon Snow, I have a version of Winterfell, I have a version of The Wall, and that version is mine and mine alone, created between myself and the words that George R.R. Martin wrote down in that immutable bond, that personal and private space that comes when you're reading good fiction. And because these books mean so much to me, because they are so fundamentally important to me, I do not want to ruin those mental images that I have created by watching someone else's interpretation of George's novels. And a lot of people say to me, oh, well, that would never happen. Don't be silly. Go ahead and watch it anyway. You can have both versions. But no, I've made that mistake in the past. My visual imagery is not so robust that it can actually survive exposure to real images, Like, for example, I read the Harry Potter books before I watched the movies. I used to have in my head a very strong image of how Hogwarts looked, how Harry looked, how Hermione looked. But now, every time I pick up the Harry Potter books and I read one of them to my children, all I can picture in my mind's eye is Daniel Radcliffe. Same with Lord of the Rings. That time, I actually watched the movies first before reading the books. Well, good luck picturing anything other than New Zealand for Middle-earth after that. But yeah, this is just a very long disclaimer up front so you understand where I am coming from. And if you, in the space of this video, maybe notice some discrepancies from the version of Jon Snow that you know if you are a fan of the show while I'm building the character, then please understand that those differences are born of the fact that I am following here the book version of Jon and not the show version. So let's lay it out up front. What do we know about the book version of Jon Snow? So Jon Snow is the bastard son of Ned Stark. Controversial statement up front right there. He is the bastard son of Ned Stark, whom Ned begot on some unknown woman that he met while out on campaign during King Robert's rebellion. There are rumors and possible fan theories circulating that he might be more than this, but officially, that is who he is. Now, Ned brought the infant Jon back to Winterfell when he was still a baby to raise as his son, no differently to any of his true-born children. And this was done at the extreme displeasure of his young wife, Catelyn. Catelyn has always hated Jon Snow as a result of his origin. But overall, Jon had a very good upbringing. He is castle raised, he was surrounded by people that loved him and respected him, and he's well educated by the standards of Westeros. He not only had a very strong martial training, but he had a very good grounding in history and reading and maths. However, partly due to his stepmother's treatment of him, Jon always felt kind of on the fringes of society while growing up. And he realizes at the beginning of the first book that he has little future as a Stark. So instead, when he's about 15 years old at the start of the series, he makes the decision to join his uncle in the Night's Watch. The Night's Watch is an ancient organization that exists in the very far north of the country, and it guards the realm against invasions from feral wildlings that live beyond the Great Ice Wall, as well as the deeper, more primal threat of the Others, the White Walkers, who plan to one day conquer the realm for reasons that we as readers do not know, but whom most people existing in the world of Westeros see as little more than just a fairy tale, a myth to scare children. So in joining the Night's Watch, Jon swears a bunch of oaths to never take a wife, to never claim land for himself, and to swear his life in service to his brothers in the Night's Watch. Honestly, I was actually thinking of making Jon a paladin for a while, simply because of these oaths that he swears. Certainly the way that Jon constantly chafes up against the restrictions of these oaths, and he has to kind of learn to live within their boundaries. It's a huge part of his character growth over the series. But no, really, Paladin wouldn't fit in terms of what he can do in the battlefield. He is a ranger. The things we see Jon doing, the actions we see him taking, he is a ranger. And it turns out that he's a great ranger because Jon isn't just a Stark. He might basically be the Stark. He is gifted in tactics, leadership, superb in a fight. He is somewhat arrogant and stuck up at first, it's true. He's very annoyed at being made a steward to Mormont rather than sent out to the front lines, and he's horrified at first by how weak the Night's Watch is, both in terms of the quality of his brothers in arms and how little regard the realm seems to pay them. But over time, he grows until eventually he kind of settles into the demands that the oaths place upon him, and he becomes a genuine leader among men. It's he who ranges beyond the wall in the second book to search for his missing uncle. It's he who pretends to fall in with the wildlings in order to survive, and it is he in the process who then learns about the true horrors that are rising in the darkness. It's he who discovers the power of obsidian, dragonglass, in dealing with the others, and it's he who ultimately saves Mormont's life when he's attacked by a white, almost losing his hand in the process. Jon spends large portions of the second and third book, basically regaining his grip again from scratch. But he also manages to gain a Valyrian sword in the process, Longclaw, Valyrian steel being a particularly effective weapon against the others. The real thing that sets Jon apart, however, is the connection that he has with his pet direwolf, Ghost, an albino direwolf who never makes a sound and the only one of its litter whose eyes were open when Jon and his siblings found them in the snow. All of the Stark children have direwolves, but Ghost, it's fair to say, is special among them. And so is Jon's bond with him, because Jon, just like all of the Stark children, is secretly a warg. A warg is a very rare person in Westeros who has the inherent magical ability to mentally project themselves into an animal, allowing themselves to temporarily see through the animal's eyes and control them from afar. Now, Jon isn't really aware that he's doing this consciously. Honestly, he's a bit dense on this part. Like, it's pretty obvious what's happening, but yeah, he's not consciously aware of the fact that he is warging, but nevertheless, he is noted as being very powerful. His bond with Ghost goes beyond words. He can control him with a thought. He can see through his eyes. He can sense what he senses. They fight as one. So how do we convert this into D&D? Well, I've already said we're going to make Jon a ranger, and like all characters in this series, we're going to build Jon at level 9. Just to be clear, I'm going to create Jon here using the optional ranger rules introduced in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, because otherwise, well, we all know how bad the ranger class was out of the box in 2014. So right out of the gate, Jon gets access to the feature Deft Explorer, which in addition to giving Jon an expertise in perception and a couple of languages, also increases his walking speed by 5 feet, as well as giving him climbing and swimming speeds equal to his walking speed. He then gets the improved Favoured Foe ability, which allows him several times a day to mark an enemy temporarily as his favoured foe in order to do extra damage against them. It's kind of like Hunter's Mark, but without the need to use a spell slot, and the damage actually scales with his level. At level 9, it does 1d6 damage in this way. As a ranger, Jon gets 3 proficiencies. We're going to go with Survival for his ability to survive beyond the wall for most of the second book, Athletics for his martial prowess, and Perception because perceiving things while on top of the wall is literally his job 99% of the time. For fighting style, I'm going to go with Defense, which gives Jon a +1 bonus to his AC. I'm doing this because, well, Jon doesn't carry a shield, but he is still shown to be very hardy in nature, and honestly none of the other fighting styles really fit with the way that we see Jon fight. Next, we get the Primal Awareness feature, which gives Jon additional spells, all of which work perfectly with his innate warg abilities. He gets Speak with Animals, that's fine. He gets Beast Sense, that's really good. And he gets Speak with Plants. And while that last one may seem a little bit out of left field, it does, believe it or not, work pretty well, because Starks in the books literally believe that the ancient heart trees that are everywhere in the north, and they have these like faces carved into them, that they are their gods incarnate. And weirdly enough, we later learn through the point of view of Bran that a powerful green seer like Bran can actually use those heart trees to see and communicate across not just vast distances, but also time as well. And who knows, if Jon were to bother training himself, maybe he too could unlock that latent ability. So yeah, it makes sense. Now at level 8, Jon gets Land Stride, which lets him travel through difficult terrain at no penalty, and then we get 2 feats to select. So at level 4 and level 8, we're going to go here with the ever useful Sentinel feat, since Jon is literally a sentinel against the darkness, and Inspiring Leader, because he is one. I mean, he single-handedly rallies his men in the third book to hold back a wildling invasion during a sequence of chapters which is probably one of my favourite in the entire series, and in the aftermath of this, he is even raised to the position of Lord Commander of the entire Night's Watch, despite King Stannis offering him Winterfell. No, he decides to stick with his brothers in arms and the oaths that he took. Gosh, I stand that man so much. And finally, we're going to have to choose Jon's subclass. And of course, was there any doubt, we are going to go with Beastmaster, which is widely considered one of the worst subclasses in D&D. But hey, the shoe fits. Now, the Beastmaster subclass gives Jon a well-trained beast companion, Ghost, who shares his initiative in combat and follows his commands. Now, unfortunately, the beast that we choose here is going to have to be a wolf rather than a dire wolf, which is what Ghost is, since the companion cannot have a challenge rating higher than 1/4, and a dire wolf in D&D has a challenge rating of 1, but otherwise it works pretty well, especially since this is no bog standard wolf that Jon is bonding with here. Jon can add his proficiency bonus to the beast's AC, attack rolls and damage rolls, and give his companion a number of hit points equal to 4 times Jon's ranger level, which at level 9 means 36 hit points and a rather tasty AC of 15. Not too shabby for a beast. From level 7, Ghost's attacks count as magical, and when it's not attacking, Jon can use his bonus action to command Ghost to take the dash, disengage, or very usefully, help actions. Obviously, Jon's background is that of a noble. His race is human, and to go with this, we get to choose another feat. We're going to go with something a little bit out of left field here to replicate Jon's castle upbringing. We're going to go with Martial Adept, which gives Jon 2 maneuvers from the Battlemaster Fighter subclass. We're going to go with Bait and Switch, so he can pull allies out of harm's way and take damage instead, and Commander's Strike, because he's a great leader and Jon is pretty selfless in battle, and this reflects that because he can then forego his attack action in order to allow one of his allies to attack instead. Hey, as a Beastmaster, he already does that quite a lot, foregoing his attack to allow his beast to attack, so this is just another version of that. And this actually gives Jon a ton of utility on the battlefield because he's kind of playing this central role on the field in which he's able to draw enemy aggro in order to tank the damage and then allow his compatriots or his beast companion to then score the actual kills on his behalf. Quite an unusual build and not for everyone, I admit. Not many players enjoy the idea of drawing the enemy's ire towards them, but I think it could be a ton of fun to play. And when all is said and done, I mean, we're going to be using point buy here, of course, but this is the final Jon Snow build. Now notice that Jon's stats here are very much a jack of all trades. I'm going to be honest, going through this process has revealed to me that Jon is written as a bit of a Mary Sue in the book series. He is pretty much good at everything. He's clever, charismatic, strong, resilient, even though he does admittedly know nothing. He's pretty good. But yeah, this is what I settled on. Okay at everything, really good with strength. And to throw in a little bonus, I am going to give Jon here a +1 magical longsword of giant slaying. His actual sword in the books is what is known as a bastard sword. Essentially, it is a sword that is too long to wield one-handed, but too short to be called a greatsword. And to use the parlance of D&D, that sounds versatile. So yeah, in D&D, we're giving him a longsword. And we're going to make it a sword of giant slaying to reflect its super effectiveness against the others. Finally, spells, and well, I mean, I'm really going to have to choose here spells that Jon could actually do within the books. Of course, A Song of Ice and Fire is a very low magic setting. There is a lot of magic there, but it's very understated and not flashy like in a Harry Potter kind of way. And so as a result, we're going to go with like quite understated spells here. So things like, of course, Hunter's Mark, we're going to choose Aid, so he can like help people around him, Animal Messenger, Enhance Ability, Pass Without a Trace, and Summon Beast to go along with those spells that I already mentioned that he gets earlier. And so this is the 2014 version of Jon Snow that we've come up with. Not bad, I have to say, and certainly a lot better than I expected going into this. I mean, Ranger does have a bad reputation among D&D players, but I quite like this. But how does this stack up against the newly launched 2024 version? Well, to find out, let's actually zoom straight in on Ghost himself, as I think it's here that we're going to see the biggest changes. Because in 2024, Ghost no longer just gets a standard stat block from the monster manual. Ghost now, like all beast companions in the new edition, is a beast of the land. It is a unique stat block that only exists in the Ranger Beastmaster subclass. And as a beast of the land, Ghost gets an AC of 13 plus Jon's wisdom modifier, so 15 in this case. His HP is going to be 5 plus 5 times Jon's ranger level, so that's going to be 50 HP here, more than before. Comparing Ghost across the two editions, we can see that actually a lot of his stats are better than before. His strength is higher now, his con is higher, his intelligence is higher, his wisdom is higher, and his charisma is higher. In fact, the only thing lower is his dex. He now gets dark vision, which is pretty cool. He also now gets a 40-foot climb speed, because wolves are great at climbing walls, apparently. He can also add Jon's proficiency bonus to any ability check that he makes. Its attacks now do 1d8 plus 4 piercing damage, which he can choose to have as force damage from level 8. Now this is roughly equivalent to, though slightly less consistent, than the 2d4 plus 2 piercing damage of the 2014 version. I would say, however, that despite the newer version of Ghost being unequivocally better from a pure number standpoint, it doesn't really feel like a wolf anymore. I mean, not only is there the aforementioned climbing speed issue, I mean, wolves can't climb. Have you ever seen a dog try to climb a tree? They can't do it. There's also the fact that Ghost no longer has pack tactics, and he no longer has keen hearing or smell. I mean, it's a generic stat block. You have to have drawbacks somewhere. But yeah, Ghost doesn't feel as wolf-like in the new edition. Your mileage may vary on how much that actually matters. But what about Jon himself? Well, again, from a number crunching point of view, he is much better now. He gets better strength, better dex, better charisma, thanks to the fact that the feats that he took are now all half feats that grant him a +1 stat increase along the way. However, he no longer gets the Battle Master maneuvers that I selected before, due to the fact that the Martial Adept feat no longer seems to exist. And this does mean that he loses a lot of the tactical flexibility on the battlefield that my previous build had. So in exchange for this, I have to choose something else. I'm going to give Jon the Savage Attacker feat, which does make him more potent in combat, especially when we combine this with the 2 weapon masteries that he now gets, that lets him inflict graze with a greatsword and sap with a longsword, a move which imposes disadvantage on a creature's next attack roll. But again, like with Ghost, all of these changes result in bigger numbers overall. He hits harder, but like with Ghost the Direwolf, it does make the character feel less like Jon Snow overall. He's a leader of men. He's not really an out-and-out attacker by himself. He directs people to kill for him. He's not always the sort of person who does the kills. And while we're talking about numbers being bigger, as is par for the course now, the newer version gets more proficiencies, he gets more expertises, he gets more spells. We're going to be adding here Zephyr Strike to give him even more punch in battle, and Revivify, because although he is currently dead in the books, I'm pretty sure that is one thing that the show has got correct, and he is not going to be staying that way for long. He is going to be revived, probably through the use of fire magic from Melisandre, and as we have seen from the character of Dondarrion in the books, if you are revived in such a way, you are able to breathe the breath of life into another character, as Dondarrion does when he revives Catelyn Stark from the dead. Revivify. Other small changes, well, Favoured Enemy is changed now, so it gives you a free cast of Hunter's Mark per day, but I mean, given the fact that that was already pretty similar to Tasha's version of Favoured Enemy, it doesn't really change much. It just hits a little harder out of the gate. Deft Explorer is the same, fighting style is the same, and in both versions he gets 2 attacks per attack action. Note that the 2014 version does have a higher AC overall. This is because starting equipment in the older edition is a bit more generous, giving Jon scale armor, but this comes in exchange of 5 feet of movement. I'll let you decide if that's a trade-off that you'd be happy to take. And so here we are. Where do our 2 versions of Jon Snow fit on our sliding scale of power when all of the above is considered? Right here. And it's mainly due to something that I haven't even mentioned yet, that being action economy. So for the 2014 version of Beastmaster, Jon has to sacrifice his attack action, or half of his attack action once he reaches level 5, in order to command his beast companion to attack on his behalf. Now that's a massive blow to Jon's action economy. Bear in mind that Jon is the one who is likely to be able to hit harder overall. He's going to be the one carrying magical items. He's going to be the one that has stats that scale quickly as he levels up. Foregoing all of that in order to allow for a single hit or miss attack from Ghost, it rarely seems like the smart play in most combat situations. Now all of this might be mitigated if Jon could, for example, use his bonus action on his turn to cast Hunter's Mark on a creature and then say to his companion, "Go on Ghost, stick him," and then Ghost attacks and benefits from that Hunter's Mark. But unfortunately, rules as written, Hunter's Mark only works on the caster, not on the Beast Companion. So yeah, Jon's turn comes up in the initiative order. What does he do? He uses his bonus action to cast Hunter's Mark on a creature that only he can then benefit from. Well, if only he can benefit from it, of course he is then going to use his attack action against the creature. Why on earth would he sacrifice his attacks in order to let his beast companion attack and not benefit from the spell that he just cast? Now, personally, if I were DMing, I would probably house rule that Hunter's Mark applies to both Jon and his beast, but I'm a very lenient DM in this way, and I'd say at least this way, you know, it'd be more of an argument for actually using the core feature of the subclass. Now, if we fast forward to the newer version of Beastmaster, we now see, okay, Hunter's Mark still doesn't work on the beast, but fine, at least this time, Jon only needs to use his bonus action to command Ghost, meaning that he still then gets his full attack action to himself. It's basically the equivalent of using a bonus action to attack, and it doesn't hurt as much if that attack misses. And yeah, it just feels a bit more balanced and fair as a result. Now, of course, Jon is still going to find it tricky to balance all of the elements in the same turn order. He can't, you know, use Hunter's Mark and command his beast to attack and attack himself. There's going to be something sacrificed here. The action economy kind of screws you over either way. Beastmaster is not a great subclass, but if I had to choose one of them to go with, yeah, the newer version is better. And this pains me to say it, to be honest, because although the 2024 version is undoubtedly better from a raw numbers point of view, both Jon and Ghost hit harder, they can do more. As I've already alluded to, I would actually argue that they feel less like themselves now. They feel less unique, they feel less special. With the older version, sure, they weren't as strong, but they felt like they'd be genuinely interesting characters to play with a unique tactical flexibility on the battlefield. The 2024 version in comparison just hits hard. I mean, it's apples and oranges, up to you which version is better, but honestly, I think I would prefer to play with the older one, even though it's worse. But that's all for this video. If you have enjoyed, please do consider using the usual YouTube pleasantries, drop a like, consider subscribing if you haven't already. As always, if you look in the description of the video, you will find links to the character sheets themselves, so you can go ahead and use them yourself. In the meantime, join us next time when we are going to be taking on Bard, my least favourite class. But in the meantime, take care, and I will see you all next time.